I had the honor of interviewing you for like an hour and a half on stage 2 years ago, and 15 minutes just isn't going to do it. But we're going to try.
We're going to try. Fast.
So, Senator, you are just welcome.
Yes.
You're just back from Saudi Arabia, where you had a little bit of a cathartic experience. Can you explain that?
I did. Well, it's great to be here with y'all, and I know we got to talk fast because we have a little bit of time.
And you're good at talking fast.
But one of my experiences in the military that you may have been aware of is I fought a 8-year battle with the Pentagon, because our servicewomen, when they served in Saudi Arabia, were being told to basically comply as if they were Saudi women. They couldn't drive, they had to sit in the backseat of the car, they had to wear a full abaya and headscarf, they always had to have a male escort. They were told when stopped by the religious police to lie and claim their fellow servicewoman as their wife. I mean, this is how dorked up it was. But I fought for this thing on behalf of our troops for 6.5 years before they ordered me there. In the end, you can Google it, or use another search engine, actually. Sorry. Is Google here? That doesn't collect your data. But in the end, I filed a lawsuit against Donald Rumsfeld. So as an active duty military officer, I sued Rumsfeld, not a good career move, but it was the right thing to do. And then I got legislation passed to overturn everything but the driving ban, because Saudi women couldn't drive. I never got to sort of see the fruits of that. I swore I'd never go back there, but I was over there a couple weeks ago with Joe Manchin to see the damage at the Saudi Aramco oil facility that the Iranians bombed. And when we came off the causeway from Bahrain, I got in a car and I drove in Western clothes. And it was like, it was very cathartic.
Moment.
It really was, because this was a pretty, I mean, I'm joking about it now, but those were not easy decisions to stand up.
Yeah, and you're not somebody that runs away from a firefight. Let me tell you. So, just your childhood briefly. Your defining tragedy in your life as a girl was your father died.
Yes.
When you were 12. I
was 12.
And that was it was defining for you.
Absolutely. I was the youngest of 5 kids, 3 older brothers, 1 older sister. So I mean, I was feisty. I had to fight for my food, so I'm feisty by nature. But I really was blessed to grow up in a very stable middle-class family. And you know, my dad came from tough circumstances, but he grew up with the values of hard work. He served in the Navy, used his GI Bill, get a good education, make a difference with your life. And at the age of 49, when I was 12 years old, he very suddenly passed away. And in between 2 heart attacks while he was in the hospital, he knew in the middle of the night that he just knew in his spirit he was going to leave us. And so he said, "Get my kids, I need to talk to my kids." And so I was so blessed that I got to visit with him. I didn't understand really what was going on. He just wanted to, you know, talk to us and think about what you talked about with those who you love this morning, right? Just the mundane things of life. We shared about, you know, the dog in school and swimming and siblings. But among other things in that conversation, he told me to make him proud. And then he passed away a few hours later. And it really deeply has impacted the entire path of my life.
To make him proud. So what's interesting too about you is that as a young woman, women weren't allowed in combat. Women weren't allowed to be, let alone be a combat fighter. Mm-hmm. So what did you decide to do?
Be a fighter pilot, but I was motion sick when I was
legally,
a kid.
Yeah, and you were motion
against the law.
Yeah, it was against the law.
Yeah. So I ended up, you know, you're 17 when you make these decisions. Anybody have a 17-year-old? Anybody have 17-year-old kids? They're flaky, right? I mean, so for me, I was just trying to find an opportunity to get a good education, to not saddle my mom with debt. I was trying to channel my energy, my feistiness, my grief. It was a very difficult time, junior high and high school for me. And I thought channeling it into something that was challenging me and being a part of something greater than myself. I wouldn't have said those words then, but so off I go to the Air Force Academy, but I really had no idea what I was getting into. And I thought I was going to be a doctor.
And again, you said you had motion sickness.
Yeah.
You wanted to be a pilot.
Well, I found out when I got there for the first time in my life that just because I had ovaries, I couldn't be a fighter pilot, and it just pissed me off. And so I channeled my feistiness into like, well, that's exactly what I'm gonna do, you know? And I mean, people laughed at me. They were like, "It's against the law," and I would say,
you were too short.
I was too short too, yeah. But I would say, we live in America, you know, laws change, and I'm gonna just have this dream in my heart, and I wanna prove them wrong, and you're going through the same training as the guys, and the fact that, you know, they just would have this random thing that says you can't fly these planes, it doesn't make any sense. A plane doesn't care if you're a boy or a girl. You know, you just fly the plane, shoot the gun, you know. So anyway, it just like, I channeled that energy into like, I wasn't gonna let the dream die. It had nothing to do with the change. It took nearly 10 years. But finally, when the door opened, the law changed, the policy changed, they had identified 7 of us women who had earned a fighter out of pilot training, but we just couldn't pick it because we were girls.
And you ended up in Afghanistan in what you called a badass plane, the A-10 War?
Yes, I chose the A-10 Warthog. It's a beautiful, ugly plane, and its entire job is close air support. We show up when the troops are on the ground under fire, often in really complex circumstances, where the friendlies and the enemy are really close. Fratricide is really high risk. It was actually built to go after Soviet tanks and anti-tank on the front lines, but it's been incredibly adaptive throughout the decades to deliver firepower in a very precise way, often in just really high-stakes situations with troops on the ground calling us in to help them. And so I picked it over all the other fighters. It's an amazing.
It's a gun. It's basically a gun on a plane.
That's the folklore.
It's all about being a gun.
Yeah, the folklore is they built the 30-millimeter gun, and then they went to the engineers and said, figure out how to fly this gun. I don't know if that's accurate. You can fact check that, but that's the folklore that we, as A-10 pilots.
So you became, you had honors, you had this incredible career as a fighter pilot, but it was not easy along the way. And what was interesting last time I talked to you was you really opened up about the sexual harassment you faced, which became most pitched as you got promotions, as you moved up the ranks.
Yeah, I found when they first opened up fighters to women, there was a hostile environment. I mean, at the time, our chief of staff of the Air Force had testified before Congress a few years earlier saying he'd rather pick a less qualified man than a more qualified woman. I mean, this is the guy leading our Air Force, right? You set the culture at the top. When they changed the law, when they changed the rule, he had to decide to get behind it. But we knew it was in his heart. If you ever want to look at something funny, you look at the press conference I had, 3 of us women standing next to him, and I was a captain, and we went through all this media training, about watch your body language or whatever, and I, like, on purpose, was sitting there with my arms folded and side-eyeing him because, I mean, I just was like, we know exactly what he felt in his heart. So it didn't set a great environment. It was a bit hostile for us. I mean, it had to change people's minds one at a time. As soon as I deployed with my first squadron, things really, I think, got better just because people realize when they're going into harm's way together, they have to put things aside. The real enemy is out there, and we're all our lives are in each other's hands. But then, as you moved up, it's one thing to be a wingman, which is where you have a flight lead tell you what to do, where to go, where to shoot, but then when you become the flight lead, or then when you become the instructor pilot, or the evaluator, or the commander, it was interesting. I felt like we had hit a point where, okay, we've arrived, women have been integrated into all the fighters, like, get over it. We picked the best man for the job, even if she's a woman, and, we're kind of through this, but I found that it actually, sometimes surprisingly got a little more hostile as you, move.
A little more hostile. So when, just to speed this up a little bit, when I interviewed the senator when you were a member of Congress, you talked about the harassment you faced, including this incredibly vicious voicemail that was left for you by the spouse of one of your colleagues. But what you didn't open up to me about, and you opened up last spring, was that you were raped by a superior. Why did you decide to come forward and talk about that?
I mean, this is something that people who know me in my life knew about. It wasn't a secret to those who know me and love me, and those who I'm in relationship with. It was something I just felt like at that moment in time, because of the position that I'm in, and because of the importance of this issue, that I had a unique perspective, not just as someone who had been a commander, who was responsible for making sure that we did not have sexual assault in my unit, but as a survivor, I had a unique perspective that I felt was important to fill the discussion. So I just, sometimes the good Lord puts you in positions that you didn't ask for, and I just felt like it was literally, we were having a hearing on Wednesday on the topic. I flew in on Monday, and as I looked at it, I just felt like, how do I explain where I'm coming from without explaining where I'm coming from? And so I just decided after thought and prayer and, talking to a few people, like, I just needed to share this. It wasn't a surprise to people who know me, but...
And become an activist and a legislative activist in terms of legislation to criminalize.
I really am in a unique position in that regard. And I think, look, so many women and men have been through sexual assault in their lives. So many have been through sexual abuse, sexual assault. I mean, it's... In a crowd this size, it's a significant percentage of us. Some people take it to their grave. When it comes to our military, this is a cancer on our good order and discipline and our mission. And we've got to do everything we can in order to rout it out and prevent it from happening and prosecute those who commit those crimes. And so I just felt like, all right, not the topic I was really planning to lead on, but here I am at this moment in time, and, it's really important.
So one piece...
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on that.
And one more point on that is I think, especially in the positions that we're in, I just felt like there's somebody that this happened to yesterday or 30 years ago who maybe in seeing someone like me sharing my story, maybe it helps them to get out of bed today, and helps them to heal through their own grief and their own suffering, in order to be able to find some hope, for their own future, that these crimes do not have to crush you and hold you down and hold you back. And so that was another reason that I shared it as someone who's in public role.
Thank you, Senator. I want to ask you about one issue we have time for. You've sponsored something called the Deter Act, which is to protect our electoral system going into 2020. What are you most worried about?
Well, let me say that I've been studying the Russians since I was a cadet at the Air Force Academy, and but it's not just the Russians. There are foreign agents out there who have been, trying to use propaganda and information operations in so many ways. I mean, the Russians tend to be the ones who've been known for it, for my whole lifetime and even before that. They've adapted their propaganda and information operations now to 21st century tools that are out there, to include obviously social media and other things. So there's two elements of it. One is the influence operations that others could try to use in order to turn us on each other and have us lose faith in our institutions and our systems, and with like a little bit of resources, they can take something that's kind of naturally maybe a tinderbox on a certain topic and then just turn Americans on each other. And I would just encourage us all, like, don't buy it, right? We're divided. We have a lot of sincerely held views on how to solve our problems, but we're all in this together and we're Americans, and let's not be fooled and gullible by the propaganda that's out there that's actually trying to pit us against each other or fuel the divisions that are there. The second piece is making sure that our actual databases, our voter files and all that are protected. And a lot has happened. These are all very decentralized at the county levels around the state. That's a strength for sure. It's also a little bit of a weakness because sometimes county budgets are low, and investing in capabilities for protection has not been a priority. But with DHS support through the states, there's been a lot of resources available now to bring us up to a stronger place, and there were, there was no indication in 2020.
Yes or no, we're stronger, and now that we're more aware in 2020.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you.